みのミュージックへどうもみのです。本日は超スペシャルゲストサンダーキャットさんをお迎えしております。 Hello, nice to have you. Nice to be here. よろしくお願いします。Feeling nervous, right?
No, don't, man. Whenever I get nervous, I start farting. So,
How many times have you been to Japan?
I've never tried to count, but several times.
Several times.
Yeah. First time I came was with Leon Ware, and I was like 18.
18?
Yeah.
That's like 20 years ago.
And that was the first time. I never forgot the first time. I'll never forget the first time because it was like, again, I was already really well versed in like, Japanese animation. So the whole time I was like, I can't wait to get out to Japan. I'm gonna find Goku. I was like, I'm gonna find him. It was still, even back then it was Vegeta too. It was still Vegeta back. I like Goku. But
when was your first time when you saw Dragon Ball? Do you remember?
Yeah, there's 3 different early things in life. I went to the dentist when I was a kid, and we used to live somewhat in Koreatown, and my parents they took me to the dentist one day, and I forget if I had teeth pulled. I remember I was having a really rough time at the dentist, and so he like, there's these bracelets that you slap and it stays on your arm.
Yeah.
And so I think I was crying or something, popped it on my arm, and I remember I just kind of was like, I looked at it and I was like, what is this? I was like, it had these little animation cell pictures on it.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it, and it was like, I think it was a picture of Raditz. It was probably from the first season. And it was like Goku standing behind Piccolo. It was like, had a couple scenes. I was like, these characters look cool. And I was like, it didn't look like anything I had seen from the cartoons we had growing up. So I was really intrigued. Like, what cartoons look this cool? I haven't seen any hair that looked like this on TV. And there's that moment. There's the moment where my summer, I have only had one job in my life, like an actual job.
Besides music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't consider it a job. It's like, you love to do it. It doesn't really feel like a job. But like when my grades were good, I wouldn't have anything to do in summer. So if I had good grades, I would go work at this comic store called Collector's Paradise. And I remember they put me in charge of the Famicom machine, and like people would come pay to play Dragon Ball Z on, was it Butoden? I think that's what it was on Super Famicom, something like that. And I remember being like, I knew what it was at that point, but then I was just like, how do you get this stuff? Like, where do you find this?
So it's a Japanese version of like Super Famicom.
Yeah, because we didn't have it in America on Super Nintendo, so it's like you had to like sear 2 parts of the back of the Super Nintendo out so it could play Japanese games, because they made some small little indentation.
Right.
You couldn't. And so I never trusted anybody to do it because I'm just like, don't touch the inside of the electronics. But a couple friends, and then they would just cut the little piece out with a hot knife or something, and then you could just put regular Japanese games in. And so everybody would come play Dragon Ball. And the other experience I had was, I had a group of friends I had growing up, and we were, like you have different, we saw the inception of the internet, basically. We saw Netscape and Navigator and get on the web browser and go type in something, picture search and stuff. And we used to go print out pictures of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT. We just knew that there were a ton of pictures.
Yeah.
So we would take shifts at the library, running the ink out, printing as many photos as we could. So we had a picture book that was like this big of just like pictures and poster artwork. And we used to like share it between us. Like Mondays and Tuesdays, David would get it. Like Wednesdays, Thursdays, then I would get it. Fridays and Saturdays, then Edson would get it. And then you bring it back on the weekend, and you get it. You could only take the book if you were going to put more pictures in it. So that's how I learned about Dragon Ball Z.
That's really interesting because you got so interested in Dragon Ball from the visual aspect. I mean, the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Not just the fighting thing or the storytelling and stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's also because I'm an illustrator myself. So way more temperamental than my music, but I spent a lot of time drawing, and I wanted to go to school for it.
Yeah, I heard that you once considered to become an animator.
Yeah.
But your dad said...
Oh yeah, no, it's like, I think the road of being an animator is very complicated too. And, but I think my dad was like, I'm in a house full of musicians. I'm also a musician. So it was just as much as I was an illustrator, I was just as much of a musician.
Yeah.
So I just took being a musician a bit more serious.
But so you participated the Flying Lotus's soundtrack for Yasuke.
Yeah.
So yeah, those two paths paths are kind of like merging together.
They intertwined.
Yeah. How was the project?
It was trippy, man. I think Lotus was more so involved with the production of it, and I always kind of like, in a sense, have these moments in life with Lotus where I'm kind of like Bat, but like I'm like Robin. I just kind of show up, it's like, and it's different. He'll have things for me to do and stuff like that. And in this particular case, it was kind of one of those things where, as I would learn that he was that much more involved in the process of production, it's one of those things where it was kind of cool because he was like, you gotta sing the theme song. Okay. And I was like, sir. And I was like, that's I was like this. Are you asking me to sing the theme song to an anime? And it was like one of those things where it was like, is this really happening right now? Because I was like, that I was born to do this. I was like, that's, and here we go. The theme song, I think, is kind of like, it's a good theme song, man. It's a good theme song.
Did you already know the story about Yasuke?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit.
Yeah.
I always did wonder. I always had like a running gag in the back of my mind where it's like, is it because I'm black? But there's a part where I'm like, I always wondered, like, like you always have this in the back of your mind, like, what was the first black guy to do this? Or what was the first black guy to do this? So it's like, in my mind, I would have this passing tone. Who was the first black guy that come over there? And then come to find out, here we go, the story of Yasuke, and it's pretty trippy, it's like, and you wouldn't think, again, you would never know these things exist because they're not like major parts of what people show outright.
Yeah.
But in every culture, in every society, there's a part of it where there's a black part of the culture.
So you did several shows this time. You had this bass that had a drawing of Asuka.
Yeah.
Is it a custom made just for you?
Yes, it's a custom made bass by the guys over at Ibanez. And I feel like, Hoshino and Ibanez, I really appreciate them and their work because they fuel my dreams about stuff. It's like every bass we've made so far has always been like a stab into the unknown, where it's like, even though it looks familiar, there's a part where even with the first bass, they were like, I had this, idea in my mind. It was like, I needed something that was like bigger because of the way I play and sing. I need to be able to see and do certain things. And I remember making the first bass was kind of like, they were like, man, this is too much, man. It's too much wood. It's going to hurt your back, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, no, we got to, it's like, I think it'll be a good balance because I'm seeing it in my mind. And so like we started creating the first bass, and it was funny, like the first prototype for the bass, it was so heavy that when it was at the NAMM show, it just kind of like, the display, all the basses were laying straight up. And by the time you get to my bass on the display, it's like about to knock the whole display over. It's like I like to call it the Berserk Base because it's like Guts' sword from Berserk. It's just huge. Yeah. It's a huge bass, and it hurts if you try to pick it up with one hand. You may disjoint your wrist. It's pretty heavy. So we've made a few different basses. We've made there's a Pikachu bass, there's a Kirby bass, and now the Asuka bass was kind of like we were experimenting again because it was like a smaller body, same type of neck style. The electronics a little bit simple, not as complex as the giant bass. And it's a good combination because I like the way the bass feels.
How long have you been playing that one?
The Asuka bass?
Asuka bass, yeah.
That's only been with me since the American tour. Since my last tour in America. It's only a couple months.
So I heard that at your show in Ebisu, there were like plenty of young Japanese musicians.
Yeah.
They gathered at your show.
Oh, that's cool.
I think it was like an exhibition of like young Japanese talent.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
it would have been nice to be able to hang out and talk more, I guess. COVID rules.
Yeah, actually, I really wanted to see that show, but I was just recovering from COVID, so I couldn't make it. The Ottawa tone that you play, I think it's really influential in Japanese scene right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's this band called King Nu, and the bassist for that band, I think he's really like heavily influenced by your style.
Cool.
And one of their drummer was at the show. So like you're like one of the key influential figure in Japanese music, I guess.
Hey, that's cool, man. That's cool.
I think those like Ottawa type of bass sound, it originated from like Boots and like those legendary figures, but you kind of like brought it back to modern music, I guess.
I feel like it's not meant to go anywhere. It's always like I have this talk with my management every now and again where I'm like, it's like vinyl. You know, everybody at one point thought that vinyl was like, oh, it's obsolete because of MP3. And as a matter of fact, it actually still does better. It's gotten more important to have vinyl.
Yeah.
Kids buy vinyl, you know, and you pass it down. It's like if you pass down a really awesome album, it's like it can almost be like it's like a piece of jewelry almost. It's like, wow, I have this, rare antique album that's like, so it's like, I look at it very similar to like what the thing with vinyl. It's like, it's never meant to go anywhere. It's just that sometimes it has to be reminded that there's something that this was, like there's a place for this that exists.
Yeah. Do you like go buy Japanese records when you like come to Japan?
I try to sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes they're complicated to find some rare ones and stuff. But I wind up buying them online a lot.
Yeah, you go to like Disc Union or...
We were talking about trying to do that this time.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have enough time. But yeah, no, that's what I said. It usually just winds up being me buying it online.
I want to ask about how you started as a musician.
How I started as a musician?
Yeah, so back when you were like a teenager or even younger, I think hip-hop was a major thing on like a mainstream scene. And why did you choose to become a jazz musician in that circumstance?
There's a part of me that's always a bit anti. Like I'll just do the opposite, just like I call it when you just have orange cat energy. One, it's the household I grew up in. I grew up in a household full of musicians. Yeah. So of course I'm going to be a musician. And I think that because I would always realize with hip-hop, a lot of sampling, it was very polarizing for me, the idea of sampling and stuff like that, because you'd have a great record, somebody take a piece of it, make a big record out of it, and it wasn't their record. They have no idea what there's being played. They don't know where they don't care who it came from. Even though the new piece of moment or the new music is amazing, the older piece of music to me, it's like it just makes me go back and listen to the album more. Yeah. So I don't know, there's a part of it as a musician that would spend my time more so playing. I would always feel weird sometimes. I would feel weird sometimes, like, oh, that's a sample of that's a Wayne Shorter sample. I mean, why don't you just go listen to Wayne Shorter? But again, all things considered, it's like that kind of thought process for me let me know that I was doing the right thing by being a musician, because there was value in the music, and it was like, you make good music, and it's like I always used to I wanted people to sample my music. I wanted people to do that. I wanted to make music where people wanted to create their own versions of it and stuff like that.
Interesting. And so you started playing bass, and around like 16 or something, you were a member of Suicidal
Tendencies. Yeah.
That moment in your life, it really fascinates me because the style is really different from what you do. Like, do you listen to those like hardcore punk type music?
Yeah, of course. Growing up in Suicidal Tendencies, I got to sit front row at a lot of different stuff, And, I've had a few people that are some of my favorite musicians and bands and stuff that I genuinely enjoyed. Like getting a chance to tour with guys like Lamb of God, like that used to be something that I really enjoyed. To go out and watch like, Sworn Enemy or, Madball or something like hardcore band, and I was always getting a chance to appreciate it for what it was. And I think the best way sometimes to listen or experience music is live. So being able to be like, oh, I've never heard this band, but seeing them play, I'd be like, oh, they're awesome. And then I go get the music,
I feel like there's this weird connection between hardcore punk music and hip-hop. Yeah. And Beastie Boys started off as a hardcore punk music. Do you think there's like a close relationship with like two genres, with the hardcore punk and hip-hop?
Hardcore punk and hip-hop? Yeah, I mean, it's like the voice. It's like it's almost like the message of what punk is, where it's like, about being able to say how you feel and all this stuff. It's like, there's a lot of similarities to rap, absolutely. Yeah.
And that message aspect.
Yeah. And like, voicing how you feel about stuff, it's like, I'm being I'm giving a very shorthand answer to it, but it's like, I definitely see the similarities between punk and rap.
Do you maintain some of the style that you learned while you were in Suicidal Tendencies?
Oh yeah. It stays with me. It stays with me. All the things that Mike would teach me, like like my presence on stage, just like it kind of stuck with me.
Oh, that's interesting. Still.
Yeah. And I still talk to the guys. I still talk to Mike Mirror. I still reach out to Dean. guys are still family.
I like to call like the scene that was in LA. I mean, there still is, but the new like emergence of talented jazz musicians. I like to call it as LA Jazz Renaissance. It's a really interesting period in jazz history because jazz was like kind of becoming traditional music, right? All of a sudden it got back to the mainstream and like started to influence all the other genres.
Yeah. I agree.
How did that happen?
That's Kendrick's fault. Kendrick came out here swinging for the fences with that album, The Pimp a Butterfly. I mean, it always existed. The reality is it always existed.
Yeah.
And like we were just saying, like with vinyl. It never left. It's just that, again, it was brought back into the front of people's minds. Like, oh yeah, jazz, you know? And I think that when Kendrick put a stamp on this with To Pimp a Butterfly, it reminded people of how good music can be again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, like more perspective, more melody, more harmony, more silent moments, more, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, it brings that back to the forefront. I'm just like, the notion and idea that jazz is dead is such a weird, dumb notion to me. It's like, everything has a tagline.
Yeah.
You know, but it's never left.
Yeah.
There's never been nothing wrong with knowing more too, you know, like, or wanting to understand more. So I think that making it part of the conversation again in pop culture and everything, pop culture just means popular, which is always fleeting. So jazz was always alive. And so it just takes on many different forms.
Do you think you can say the same thing for other genres too, like rock music, folk music? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Rock music is like, you have die-hard fans of rock music, you know?
Yeah.
People pass rock music on the same way that we were talking about passing vinyl on. Like, your favorite band becomes your kid's favorite band. And you take your kid to that concert, and then when they get older, they remember that their dad took them to this concert, and I got this shirt at the concert, and it's like, I took my kid to that concert, and it's like, you know, it just keeps going. It's legacy. So in other genres of music, it's like, and maybe not always the same as rock music, but yeah, it's like, with funk, it's like, it's a real special, delicate thing in the music, because it's almost like it's anti-pop culture. You know, it's pop by way of aesthetically and certain things, but like, it's more like when you think about Bootsy in Parliament, it's like, or even Prince or Rick James, it's like, it will change everything about your makeup or your DNA. But the line from listening to a Charlie Parker to listening to a Miles Davis to listening to a Rick James, those lines are in pop culture, they're like you can barely see the connecting lines. You know, but it's one of those things where maybe with Prince you can see it sometimes. But it's like Miles was trying to connect these things. I think, like, you know, if everybody always has this thing with Miles alive, what had he been doing? They did the movie like this. Miles would have been talking to Tupac and Andre 3000, trying to figure out how to make good music.
Yeah, he was like working with Marcus Miller.
Yeah, we know the things we know.
Yeah. He was like leaning towards hip hop.
Yeah, he would have been hanging out with Andre Benjamin, like, man, let's do something cool. We're trying to figure out what's next, you know? With other genres, I think that, like I said, with funk, I don't think funk is a genre. Just like you can't say swing is a genre. It's like, it's a feeling. And you can feel the funk, but to put a title on it feels so weird and anti what funk is. That makes sense to me?
That's deep.
Yeah, it's like, you know, because everybody loves funk. You know, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of funk? Big afro and, like, you know, bell bottoms. And it's like, that has nothing to do with the feel. I mean, that's an aesthetic. Yeah. But with Bootsy in Parliament and Bernie Worrell and Junie Morrison and what these guys were doing and Jerome Braley, and it's a feeling that gets captured as a snapshot. And, you know, the way it sounded back then is not the way it sounds ever. It always is changing, just like everything else. So the way Prince sounded from his first album to the next album is a drastic difference. Yeah. Because the funk was different in the feeling of those different albums. But it's the same person, but genuinely different feeling.
So funk is it's not a genre, but it's a feeling.
Because what makes you enjoy jazz records when it's swinging? You don't go buy a swing record. You go buy a jazz album, and either they're swinging, like, oh, they're killing. What is that feeling? What's the feeling when Tony Williams is playing? feels like jazz. No, that's not what it feels like. It feels like he's swinging. He's killing it. So that's the same with funk. It's like, oh, that's funky. Like, oh, what does that mean? Feels good.
Do you think that feeling funk is a universal thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find it like all around the world.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. And when you do, it almost feels like nutritional. You feel like, oh, I found something real funky over here. Like, you feel like, man, I found some crazy Polish jazz, and you're like, oh, what's this? Oh man, I'm checking this out, and you're like, man, that feels good. That sounds good. Funky. A lot of Japanese artists, you know what I mean? Some of my favorite artists in Japan, they're funky as hell.
Who are your favorite Japanese artists?
I always mess up and stumble on the names sometimes.
Yeah.
Akiko Yano, I love it.
Yano Akiko.
Amazing. Funk. Here we go. I was going to try to pronounce his name earlier, and it's because you guys say the names backwards. I always keep thinking the last name first.
Right.
If I could get the phone to load.
It's a bit tricky.
Tatsuhiro.
Yamashita Tatsuro.
There we go. Thank you. Because I wanted to say Tatsuro Yamashita versus Yamashita Tatsuro.
You find funk in his music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? Shoot, man. It's like again, even with Nujabes, it's the way things feel.
Do you find any difference of how Japanese people treat rhythm and how other, let's say American funk artists treats music, rhythm?
On the top of
On
it.
the top.
When the further you dig down into it, it all feels, it's all similar. You start
So
to
the
feel
core
similar.
is similar, but
On top is different.
the layers
Yeah.
oftentimes different.
Yeah, like preference for melody and harmony always consists of I think what is again with a knowledgeable perspective of it always changes or kind of shifts the way people process.
Yeah.
So a good example would be in a lot of European pop music, or even I guess in a lot of European pop music, you hear a lot of classical influence. Like when you get to a band like Muse. Or like Radiohead, and you're like, what is that? Well, where it comes from, where a lot of it comes from is that a little bit of a classic perspective.
Yeah.
Where again, classical music, where they're coming from, the UK, the British, all this stuff. There's a big history of this as the music preference. So the melody and harmony is naturally skewed by lots of composed classical music. In Japan, there's classical music, but there's also a big culture of jazz.
Yeah.
So in this world, as a musician, when you think of the types of musicians that come out of this type of perspective, the first one that comes to mind is Anthony Jackson, bass player. Studied classical in college, but he's a jazz musician. Every record Anthony Jackson's played on is it's insane. From Steve Khan to Shaka Khan. It's like that is a crazy dynamic when you think of that. He's playing on these crazy jazz albums, and then Quincy Jones is calling him to play on the Dude, and then here goes Shaka Khan with the funkiest album you could get. Michael Brecker and George Duke and everybody and the band is slamming, and it's like you got the type of musician that vacillates these worlds. So it's like Japan has a great understanding of those different things, and so what comes as a result of that is a lot of crazy funk music. Now, the way it hits the world, the way it reaches the world is a different story. Brazil is another place like this. Big history in classical music and stuff like that. Big history in jazz music. And some of my favorite musicians are Brazilian also. You know what I mean? It's almost uncanny, I think, sometimes. And it's like I said, on top, you may hear some cool, nice, on top light melodies and harmonies, but when you start getting into the funk, like we were talking about with the Yamashita Tattoo, it's like...
this might be a really vague question, but I feel like Japanese music are oftentimes really structured.
Yeah.
Lots of chord changes, even in pop music.
Yeah.
And really intricate melody line. You said we have rich culture in jazz and funk, but I feel Japanese music, when they really started off, I think it's similar to the evolution of African Americans music. Your music started off from gospel, blues, really in a form it's a really primitive music, right? 3 chords and a simple melody. And our folk music too, it's really simple. But I don't have an answer to this question, but I feel really weird about how our music got so complex. And do you have any
thoughts on how it became so complex? I don't know. I think that there's historical events that could bring these things about. There's influence. Influence will always be always an inclination of the idea of something changing, But I don't know. Personally, if I had to take a guess at it, I would think that again, the world kind of came to Japan in an interesting way at some point. You know, I think, you know, and everything from influence to like, you know, like the way things would come here or the way things would, you know, go from here. It's like I think that there's got to be some different representations throughout history of like moments that changed the course of what this was here.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not so outright seen, but you can feel it. You can feel it because the reality of what jazz was in America and that being that the birthplace of this, you know, it's like the reality is that America it's still right across the water. You know what I mean? Truthfully, it is, and it's only right that these kinds of things melt and collide to some degree, you know. But to be honest with you, that feels like that's a good question that I feel like Austin Peralta would have been able to answer that question probably a bit better because I wasn't classically trained, you know, and even growing up in jazz, it's like my knowledge is limited of it, you know. But I always wonder these types of things too. I always wonder like how did they get to this, you know, like this. What created this feeling that will bring this about? You know.
Yeah, I've been keep thinking about this topic, but like I can't really pinpoint how this happened. And like you said, so the British artists, you can like see the traces of classical background, and that's totally understandable because like they have
choices in pop culture's melodies and harmonies.
And it's totally understandable because you know like they've been like doing a crazy study about musical theory for like centuries, right? So I can totally see why modern artists have that kind of taste. But like for Japan, our first contact to Western music was when Matthew Perry came to Tokyo, and when they forced to open up our government, they had a marching band. So that was our first contact with Western music. So that's only like 200 years ago or something, right? Yeah, we don't have like a long history of classical music, but still like we appreciate it a lot. Kind of throws me off because back then we were like just like, you know, strumming shamisen.
The harder drums are the hard drums, and I know what you're talking about. It's interesting. However, it's like it catches on, and it's like it's not a negative thing. It never, you know, it's just again, music will always be I always feel like music is ours and not ours at the same time. It's a glimpse into a whole other world that we can be front row, try to steer, but it's just like you come and go, and whatever you leave here is a fingerprint or a trace of something that somebody else can take and go, what is this? And they can do something with themselves.
Did you watch Shin Ultraman?
Did I watch it on Netflix?
No. It just came out on theaters.
It just came out?
Yeah, in Japan.
I've been meaning to see it then. Okay. No, I haven't seen it.
It's the latest work of Hideaki Anno.
Yeah, it's right? The Evangelion. I see the advertisements for it. I didn't know if it came out. A lot of the time, like if I miss it when it first comes out, I just buy it on DVD anyway. I literally I have a giant DVD collection. Literally, it's mostly anime and horror. That's it. And like, I'm gonna check it out. And I think the design for it looks all crazy too. His eyes are all wild looking, right?
It's actually the original design.
Okay.
Yeah, but the technical limitation. I mean, back then, you know, during the '60s, they had to like poke a hole so that the actor can see through it.
Yeah.
But the original idea was that like they didn't want to like put a stupid hole on the mask.
Yeah.
So they tried to like recreate the original.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. Yeah, because I watched the CG anime joint that they did on Netflix. That's why I thought you were talking about that.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Have you seen the original?
Yeah.
You got like covered everything. Like, that's crazy.
I mean, you know, the Dragon Ball was the gateway.
Yeah.
And as soon as that door got busted open, I was like, oh, you guys make things good over here. Yeah, anime was like a gateway into understanding like the different. And I think there's just always, I don't know, the art from here has just always been what it's been. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. your songwriting, does it? Well, it's not like classic jazz, right? Like is it like arranged, or like do you kind of improvise while you are like making it?
Yeah.
In the process.
Yeah.
So it will change a lot from the blueprint.
Oh yeah. Like, and this is why sometimes with people they'll have like they'll be listening to the album and there'll be a song that's 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. Why isn't this song longer? Because that was off. That's it. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be a song that's fleshed out and it'll be lush and have like changes. And, you know, your Dennis soloing, or like it'll be a crazy solo from somebody, or Kamasi or something, and it's like I think technology's allowed these types of things to happen.
Yeah,
a song could be anywhere from 30 seconds to like 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and it's like a lot of different things happen depending on what's going on in my life at the time. So there's moments where JD and Domi are there. There are moments when I'm in the studio with Flying Lotus. There's moments where I'm with Big Sean or Kendrick or somebody, and I know they're saying those two names together, whatever. They're always at odds, but not really. But all these things and inflections influence the music I write, for sure.
Do you write from like a chord progression or a beat or lyrics, or what do you usually start off with?
It changes. The more time I spend sitting there, it changes. My first go-to will always be playing my bass, because that's what I've done most of the time. It's left alone sitting there playing my bass for a period of time. Then it becomes me singing with my bass. Then it becomes I have an idea for a song, and then I don't know how to put this to music. It all changes. It just revolves in different ways, or evolves in different ways. It's just like bass, drums, music, chords, lyrics, weird fart noises. It's all, we just leave it in the song. It's like, that's part of the percussion. It's like, it sounds like you farted. Yes. We added some chorus to it, so now it sounds like...
Which song can I find your fart noise?
Well, I don't really hold my ass up to the mic, but...
Of course.
You can tell when I'm like holding in a fart sometimes, or like in the Oh Shit It's X song. It's like, I'm like, because that was the end of the lyrics, but I'm pretty sure I probably farted.
That kind of reminds me of, well, this is a totally different subject, and it's not your project too, but so Flying Lotus is Soul, the movie.
Yeah. Oh, legendary moment.
It's so, as a Japanese person, it's so weird that you guys pick up that word and put it on the title.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, he's a legend for that one, man.
Do you have any message for your fans in Japan?
First off, I love you. Thank you for your support. Second, yell more. More yelling on a normal basis. Yell at things.
Oh, that's our typical attitude when we see a show. Do you know an episode that when Beatles came to Japan, they were so used to the screaming fans, right? They couldn't hear them playing. They couldn't hear their sound, so they were kind of being a mediocre musicians. Well, that's what John Lennon said, right?
Yeah.
So when they came to Japan and the audience was so quiet that they thought, hey, we are getting really bad at our instruments.
Nice.
That's one reason that they quit touring.
Because they came to Japan?
Yeah.
Realized they sucked?
Yeah. So that's our contribution for their career, I guess.
That's funny.
Anyways, it was great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。